In this episode, we'll be covering a hot topic in aerospace and defense, which is the growing need for autonomous aircraft to protect our world. Specifically, we'll deep dive into the collaborative combat aircraft, also known as CCA. To get us kicked off, we'll be recapping all the major events that happened during March. March is also Women's History Month. There was global supply chain disruptions out there. I think, Rob, we still living the dream on that one.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a challenge, especially in my world, being within supply chain. COVID was a major disruption to the industry. Suppliers being, pressed for parts coming over from the Far East. So yeah, it's still a work in progress. Aerospace is still marching through it, especially in the commercial side.
Yeah, that's true. We had some space exploration milestones. The NASA Perseverance rover successfully landed on Mars, beginning its mission to search for signs of post-microbial life and get samples to return back to Earth. And SpaceX did some good stuff. They had several launches as well, and then Starlink is getting redeployed across the world as well, and a couple of resupply missions to the International Space Station. From a defense budget perspective, we got a budget, thank God, right?
Yep.
We finally got a budget, not a CR. Hopefully, life will be a little settled in as we get into closing out this fiscal and moving forward with the next one, right?
Yeah, exactly. The big thing about, hopefully everything settles now that we have the budget.
Right. Other news, obviously, we got a lot of geopolitical tensions and military operations that's happening with Ukraine. So West is prepping for everything else that's happening in the world. A lot of exercise and diplomacy is being to get it done from that perspective. We got what's happening in the Middle East. So it's a lot going on, but we know that our fighters and our warfighter is up for the challenge, and we're going to do everything we can to support them and supply them the needs so they can get back home safely.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing for the government this year is around, accelerating the need for autonomous platforms, in the air, land, sea, and space area, just to, help protect those men and women that are, fighting for the country.
Yeah, I agree. And then last but certainly not least, commercial aviation is going crazy. Lots of things happening, right? The recovery is definitely in working, but there obviously is a lot of issues with safety and things like that. But as someone who's just been on the road 8 of the last 9 weeks, I can tell you that the airports are full and planes are full. Right? What about you, Rob? You've been experiencing that?
Yeah, I would say I get this question all the time, seeing that my day job is within Boeing, so I'm on the defense side, so I'm not seeing too much on the commercial side, but I know safety is a huge priority for the company, and we're continuing to make that a key objective for to turn around things for those commercial aircraft.
And of course, March is also Women's History Month, right? And so, what I like to, always bring about is highlight some of those great titans within our industry, right? Like one of our hidden figures, Katherine Johnson, right? Or even Amelia Earhart, or even Bessie Coleman, right? But and then we always talk about what's happened in the past, but let's talk about some of the present titans that I've had the pleasure, and I think you as well, Rob, had the pleasure of meeting, Stephanie C. Hill, the president of Rotary Mission Systems at Lockheed Martin, or even Joan Robinson Berry. She's retired now, but former senior vice president, chief engineer for Boeing's Global Services. And what I remember spending a lot of quality time in and outside of the job is, seeing her at, things like Black Engineer of the Year, both of them, Black Engineer of the Year, or various aerospace conferences and things around the world we've been in. But what's been always impressed with me with Joan is just her adaptability to make hard problems seem solvable, right? And big problems problem opportunities was she led that entire effort to bring the 787 from Washington to Charleston, South Carolina. That was all under her tutelage and leadership, right? And that was a huge effort. And we definitely want to big up all those titans in our industry for that, particularly, and reflect on those accomplishments that those that came before us, right? I think Isaac Newton had a saying, if I've seen further than others, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants. And these are just a few of those giants that paved the way for not only women, but for all of us today in our industry, right?
Yeah, and that really is a great quote to reflect on all the contributions made for women in this industry, especially being in Women's History Month. So, Dwayne, now let's shift gears to discussing this hot topic for the episode, which is a personal favorite of mine. So, collaborative combat aircraft. Dwayne, can you give us a quick definition of what these aircraft are?
Yeah, sure, I sure can, right? So the concept of the CCA or collaborative combat aircraft represents a paradigm shift in military aviation. It's emphasizing cooperation, technological integration to develop this advanced war fighter aircraft capability to meet these needs, right? The mission of this aircraft is to develop this next generation fighter platform capable of addressing evolving threats, real time evolving threats, as well as operational requirements, promoting and maintaining interoperability among allied nations, as well as within the military itself. It's an all service effort. The Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, Army all have a play in this. And the key objectives is to include enhancing air superiority, having multi-role capability, survivability, and affordability to meet the demands of modern warfare. CCA are autonomous vehicles that perform different missions, ranging from carrying weapons to flying ahead of other aircraft to provide intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, or ISR. And they relay valuable early warning and evade detection information from, electronic warfare and striking targets to either those that are in the mission itself or to relay that data back into the mission, back into the fleet. Anything else the audience should know about this as we get real technical with us, Rob?
Yeah, so I mean, autonomous platforms in general, from the air, land, sea, and space, are really what's hot in the world of aerospace and defense right now. These advancing technologies will really take us from, human livable ecosystems outside of Earth to urban mobility in the new futuristic city infrastructure. And then lastly, covering, deep sea underwater explorations. All that is really accomplished from these autonomous platforms, which is really great to see come to fruition in the coming years. Some of the latest announcements from the Air Force program specific to CCAs, as recently they announced that 5 companies are in the running for the drone wingman program. So those companies are Boeing, General Atomics, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and a startup called Anduril are the pool of vendors that have so far been selected for the Air Force's early stage of the CCA program. And then a down select is expected to occur over the course of this year, which is we're all really excited to see how this develops throughout this year into next year. And these CCAs are really comprised of a new breed of significantly less expensive and highly autonomous, mission-focused unmanned collaborative combat aircraft that fly alongside these fifth generation and newer human crew fighter jets.
So, how does the CCA's team with these fighter jets that you just talked about?
So, how these pair with fighter jets is where man-unmanned teaming, or reference MUM-T concept, comes into play. So, MUM-T is defined as a synchronized employment of soldier, man, and unmanned air and ground vehicles, robotics, and sensors to achieve enhanced situational understanding, greater lethality, and improved survivability. So it's that construct of how something pairs with a manned asset versus an unmanned asset. And really, to break this down further, MUM-T is a standardized system architecture and communications portal that enables live and still images gained from those sensor payloads of unmanned aircraft to be shared across a sophisticated data link to manned platforms at different levels of interoperability. And those levels of interoperability really cover from single platform control from a ground control system to multi-platform control from other manned and unmanned assets. So that covers a range of possibilities for these aircraft to pair with, other fighter jets to accomplish missions.
So you talked about how, what's the unmanned and versus the manned, or how they're going to play together. So how does autonomy play into this scenario, Rob?
Yeah, autonomy and AI is where I really see being the linchpins of enabling this integration of these platforms into our world. Autonomy has the potential to revolutionize the way humans connect, protect, and explore and inspire different missions that's being accomplished. But autonomy is really more than just, the latest unmanned product. It's also about a purposeful innovation in areas like persistence and intelligence, The true value of autonomy lies within its ability to help customers stay on missions longer, cover more area, and provide more immediate actionable knowledge, therefore prioritizing that manpower for the most important actions and decisions. So it's really protecting that man asset to allow them to really dive into what are going to be the key decisions they need to make to within that teaming standpoint. But in my opinion, I believe autonomy and AI will shape how we communicate and connect with these autonomous platforms. And will the government push for a common autonomy software in this space? I think so, but this is still so far into the future as most of these platforms are at various levels of the program lifecycle. So you have some that are, currently in production and are actually operating right now, and then some of the new futuristic vehicles are still being developed right now with government assistance and things like that, especially through DARPA.
I can hear the passion of how you're geeking out on all these autonomy and the programs there, Rob. It's really awesome to hear that in your voice. Obviously, it's particularly, I think, on the mission space, particularly with the warfighter, you want to make sure you're trying to help them, as much as you can relieve war fatigue, right? Mission fatigue, and as they're going through it, as they process information. So the more we can take that outside, so they can really, really focus and go press that button and or go send that data back and go make a decision. The easier, the quicker they can do it, the easier you can do it, the quicker they can come home, right?
Exactly. And that's one of the key missions and the key objectives for these autonomous vehicles is really to provide the man access and the man to really, make those key decisions as we move forward. And it really has been a majority of my experience within Boeing since I joined in 2018. And it's also a personal passion of mine outside of work as well. I would love to hear more about your business insights on this topic and how this is starting to develop within the DoD budget that was originally released.
Yeah, that's a great turnaround for us. I really appreciate that. So, the program is budgeted for around maybe about 570 million or so, and it definitely is going to change. But let's just talk about what's happening in the industry, right? And so, we got to figure out there's a lot of things that's happening, right, that the government's going to do. First, we got to, develop and scope some of these requirements of what these aircraft, what is this autonomy, and try to figure out what can we do in what spaces and where are we pushing the envelope and things like that. You got to figure out from next perspective, there's some technical complexities to put this together. And so, you got advanced features, you got stealth, you got sensor fusion, you got network centric warfare capabilities, all those things that you want to bring to bear, particularly the advanced work that industry is doing, particularly on what we do in my space at Raytheon, right? And you're trying to ensure that, particularly put your hat in from a customer perspective, from the government perspective, is that they want to bring as much as they can to bear, but they only got so much to get going, right? And so we're trying to get the best of the best we can from a capability perspective. And then it's also this thing of how do we let this out to industry to go help us solve this problem of putting yourself in the government's hat, right? What partnerships do we need to establish? As you can see, Anduril's coming up in this space, right? They do a lot of autonomous commercial aircraft and things like that. There are tons of opportunities where we're trying to figure out how the government's trying to figure out how they can go bring all those industries bring to bear and partner in certain ways from, cost sharing, technology transfer, bringing some initiatives out and putting that together, right? And then once you start pulling those threads, then you got this huge research and development effort that's got to happen, right? It's a lot of R&D work. It's a lot of bringing technologies to bear from the DARPA space, and then prototyping what we want to see based on these requirements, right? What do those equities look like? What do those services look like? How do we support that and get something that's at a TRL level 7 and above, getting ready to go into production and sustainment, right? Which is how you maintain this aircraft, how you deliver this aircraft, and bring it out into that perspective. And then circle all that together with all these forces. And then you as you put yourself in the government shoes, now you got to figure out how to fund this thing. And right now, projected to be like 570 million or so, like I talked about earlier. But we know, as we all know, that's going to change, right? That's going to evolve. It's going to be points of matter and how our economy is moving, how the world economy is moving. We got to be mindful and understanding that Some folks are going to be ahead of the game. Some folks are going to be behind. Some folks are going to catch up. We want to pull in and making sure that we have a full view of industry engaged, but we also want our international and partners to participate in this piece and to make this thing happen. So this is going to be a big effort, right? And so,
Yeah.
As somebody who's ran programs or outgoing and trying to go shape these requirements and things like that, this is where we are working with our customer, our government customer, working with the platform OEMs to make sure that, hey, find these requirements, shape what things we can do, what is in the art of possible now, and then what is in the art of the future, and how we can help our customer understand where these things can land and when technologies come to bear, and as well we obviously try to make this as affordable as possible, right?
Yeah, exactly, Dwayne. And the really amazing insights there from a budgetary standpoint and how you shape and scope those requirements with customers to really bring a program to life. To pull on a thread that you mentioned, really partnering with the government agencies to really figure out what they actually want and how to, truly scope this effort. Do you think the government is able to, keep up with industry as far as, funding it adequately? Depending on, I've heard out there, 2025 is something that they want to try to, hit from the timeline standpoint. Do you think the government is ready to really bring that forward that quickly? Or do you think it's going to be more of a phased approach for, 2025 and beyond?
I think it's going to everything that we can, all the above, right? So from the customer standpoint, at least from the government standpoint, that we're trying to leverage everything the industry can bear, but also really putting it back on industry from an R&D perspective to bring these technologies a little bit further using your own funding or accomplish those things, right? And then you get into, contracting and technology transfer and all those programmatics that you got to do when you're trying to bring some of these things to bear. And it's a constant conflict, but we know based on the mission and based on the need for the mission and based on availability, but when those things got to happen, that usually cranks up the gain on what the art of the possible is. So it's always a ebb and flow in that process to answer that question.
Yeah, and I see more the government going for, utilizing the non-traditional defense contractors, things like that, those type of funding to really bring this forward because, they want to accomplish the mission as quick as they possibly can, but, they need to fund it in a certain way. So, it would be really cool to see how things are shaping over this year, since I know they're going through the phased approach with the CCA program as far as down select and things like that. So, I'm curious to see how things develop. And I think the various pieces of budget, requirements, and technology are all really connected and intertwined together. And it's really great to see you really, dive deep into explaining that further for others like myself, and then for others that are listening too. And it really gives me a fresh perspective on understanding that from a better financial impact.
Yeah, and I think for those that's in our industry that work for those platform OEMs or even for companies that's in support of this effort that's out there, right? It's about, hey, if there's something that tickles your fancy and you're passionate about, you got to start looking at personally at your skill sets that you bring to bear and what you value and to go make that happen, right? And go really stand on those, and put yourself out there and say, hey, I want to go work on that on this CCA program and what our part is, and go find your value add and go connect with those program officers or the business development people, or just really getting out there to really understand this is the future. It's a thing, and you need to spend some time to really understand to get a part of this. That's why this podcast has been developed, is to make sure that we share those tidbits with the folks that's in our industry, as well as folks who are thinking about coming to our industry, of like what the cool stuff we have that's out there. So let's just wrap up today, right? We want to thank our audience for tuning in to Brothers in Aerospace and Defense. So, Rob, what are the three things that you got out of today's discussion?
Really, the three things I got is, first we recap, the industry highlights from March. And, given that March was Women's History Month, we want to make sure that we, highlighted some, key people that have had an impact on, industry in the past, but also, people that are currently doing it to this day. Second being, we did a tech deep dive on, CCAs, what they are, how they pair with fighter jets, and what is the future of autonomy and how does it become the brains of this whole operation that we're going down with the autonomous platform. And then finally, we wrapped up, having talked about financial impact and bringing these programs to life. How does this evolve from a customer standpoint, setting the budget, from scoping the requirements to actually, funding and bringing these programs forward. So those are the three things I got from it. What about you, Dwayne?
I got a lot out of the day. I think one of the point number one, I had somebody really explain to me what MUM-T meant and the concept, right? And I want to thank you for that. And you gave it to me where it wasn't a bunch of words. You put it where, like my granddaddy used to say, where the goats can get it. So I appreciate that. The other point was really just sharing how things come to bear when these new programs come about, from how it get funded, what industry does to go help, and how to bring those capabilities to the warfighter. It's a trudge, part of the process, but it's definitely a good learning. And then, last, thing I take away is like, man, I'm always inspired by how knowledgeable and how you really geek out on these type of things. That's always cool for me to see that, there is passion in the technical capabilities of what we have and what you bring. And I'm always impressed with that, brother. So those are the 3 points I got out of it. And Rob, we're not only, in this industry, but what's been going on with you in your world?
For me, the majority of my time has been preparing for baby number 2. We have a 2-year-old son right now, and then we're expecting another one in early May. And we also decided to relocate in the DMV area. So they always say not to relocate right before you have a baby, but we need more space. So we relocated. So to accommodate this growing family that we have. So that's taking some time to settle in. So it's really, getting home, everything settled for home. That's really been my key thing. And I've also taken on some additional work scope within my day job, within the F-15 program, which really adds a lot more technical tools to my career skill set. So I think that's really been amazing to see that coming forward. And then lastly, I'll be writing a piece about what the automotive industry can learn from aerospace. That'll be published in the upcoming Autonomous Vehicle Conference, late May. So I'm really excited to do that. And those have been the things that's been on my mind lately. How about you, Dwayne? What have you been up to lately?
It's been a whirlwind, my friend. I think when we last got together, I was just coming back from BEA, Black Engineer of the Year Awards ceremony, which is always a fantastic opportunity where we celebrate the senior leaders of our industry, both on the civilian industry as well as in the military side. That's always heartwarming, right? And then, I just got back as well from the NASAD of Black Engineers 50th National Convention. So it's 50th birthday, which was a crazy, insane, awesome time where, you can family reunion with 18,000 engineers, right? Mm-hmm. And they look like you and me, right? And we all convened in Atlanta. And I hosted several workshops at both. And when they all went very, very, very well, I was very pleased with that. Also, I got some expanded responsibilities on the day job, which has cranked up the Admirals Club's visits for me. But excited about what bringing our new capabilities to the warfighter. Like you, I've got a couple pieces out, really highlighting from the Storyteller newsletter that's out about exceptional leadership. Great read. You go take it out. But lots on the plate. It's going to be I think the summer is going to be crazy. I'm really looking forward to it, right? So we hope you enjoyed this exploration of the industry from both